Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time in every person's life when the noise fades, the crowds disappear, and all that remains is the man in the mirror. No spotlight, no audience, just silence and truth. Today, I want to speak about that silence. I want to talk about the man who chooses solitude not out of weakness, but out of strength. A man who walks alone, not because he has no direction, but because he's walking a path few dare to take. Because sometimes the most dangerous man in the room isn't the loudest. He's the one who's found peace in his own company. The one who has faced himself, wrestled with his own doubts, and risen without needing the world to clap. Let me take you into that journey. The power of stillness, the fire of silent battles, and the unshakable strength of a man who knows who he is. When a man chooses solitude, it's often misunderstood. People might assume he's lonely, isolated, or avoiding life, but the truth is, solitude isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of deep strength. It's in that quiet space, away from the noise of the world, that a person begins to discover what they're really made of. In the stillness, there are no distractions to hide behind. No one clapping for you, no one validating you, no one filling the silence with compliments or laughter. It's just you, and that can be terrifying, because when you're alone, your thoughts speak louder. Your fears come forward. The pain you've buried for years starts knocking on the walls of your heart. And here's the thing, not everyone is brave enough to sit with that kind of silence. Why does that rejection still echo in me? Why am I afraid to love, to try, to hope again? Solitude becomes a teacher. It doesn't yell, it doesn't rush, it whispers truth slowly, and only to those who are willing to hear. It reminds him of the things he's tried to forget, not to punish him, but to heal him. The things he avoided in the crowd now face him directly, and the remarkable thing is, he grows through that. He learns that pain doesn't destroy, it refines. That silence doesn't mean absence. It often means presence, the presence of healing, the presence of peace. Solitude strips away the mask. It takes away the performance. You're not a friend, a partner, an employee, or anyone else in that moment. You are simply you. And for many, that's the scariest person to face. But the man who chooses solitude voluntarily, he's the one who understands that growth begins where comfort ends. In that space of silence, he meets his insecurities head on. He doesn't run from them. He doesn't drown them in entertainment or busyness. He acknowledges them. He listens. He asks questions like, why am I still hurt by that? And that fire, if you stay with it, forges something powerful: resilience. Resilience isn't built when life is easy. It's built in the moments that break you open. It's built when tears come without warning, when memories sting like fresh wounds, when the ache in your chest feels too much to carry, but you carry it anyway. Not because you want to, but because you've realized no one else can do it for you. At that moment when you face the pain with nothing to distract you is when the shift happens. We scroll through phones, binge shows, surround ourselves with noise, or bury ourselves in work just to keep from feeling what's really going on inside. But the truth is, pain doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It waits, and it waits in the silence. The person who chooses to face their inner pain without running from it is not weak. They are courageous. It takes more strength to sit with your pain than it does to escape from it. Because when you choose to feel it, you're choosing to heal it. You're choosing to walk through the fire instead of pretending it doesn't exist. In solitude, he learns how to rely on his own presence, his own voice, his own decisions. He stops asking others what he should do. He stops depending on the crowd to tell him who he is, because now he's learning that who he is doesn't come from outside opinions. It comes from deep within, the kind of knowing that only silence can reveal. He begins to understand his worth apart from productivity or applause. He realizes that he doesn't need to be constantly seen to have value. He doesn't need to constantly speak to have a voice. He doesn't need to always be doing to be growing. In solitude, growth looks different. It's quieter, slower, but deeper. It's also a kind of confidence that solitude builds. One that doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't boast. It doesn't need to. It shows up in the way he walks, in the way he speaks calmly in chaos, in the way he listens without rushing to respond. People begin to notice something different in him, something grounded. That difference was born in the silence. And when storms come, as they always do, he doesn't panic, because solitude has already taught him how to be still in the storm, how to breathe through the fear, how to trust the process even when he doesn't see the outcome. He's been there before in his own mind, in his own heart, and he didn't run. He stayed and he learned. So solitude isn't a prison. It's a training ground. It's where the deepest roots grow. It's where true strength is forged. Not the loud kind that needs a stage, but the quiet kind that stands tall when everything else falls apart. Inner pain is something most people try to avoid. It's uncomfortable, it's heavy, and when it shows up, the first instinct is often to numb it through distractions, noise, busyness, or even people. You start to see what's under the surface. The disappointments you buried, the heartbreaks you pretended didn't hurt, the fears you kept behind smiles, the grief you never made time to process. All of it comes up when the noise fades. And while it might feel overwhelming at first, it's also an invitation to understand, to forgive, and to let go. You begin to learn how strong you really are, not because you are unaffected. You stop judging your emotions and start listening to them. You asked deeper questions. Why am I still carrying this? What did that moment teach me? What belief about myself did I pick up from that pain? And is it even true? You start seeing pain not as a punishment, but as a mirror. It reflects back the parts of you that still need love, attention, and truth. And something unexpected happens in the middle of that process. Your tolerance for pain expands. Not in a way that makes you cold, but in a way that makes you stronger. You stop crumbling at the first sign of discomfort. You stop reacting impulsively just to make the pain go away. You start breathing through it, standing with it, and eventually walking beyond it. Resilience shows up in the quiet victories, when you choose to speak kindly to yourself after a failure, when you set boundaries that protect your peace, when you choose growth over comfort. It's not loud, but it's powerful. It's in your posture, in your choices, in the way you carry yourself, even when life feels heavy. Facing your pain also gives you something else, empathy, because once you've sat in the dark, you know how it feels for others too. You don't forget what happened. You don't erase the past, but you no longer let it define you. You grow, not just around the pain, but through it. And that growth, born in the hardest moments, is the kind that no one can take from you. It becomes a quiet strength that anchors you for the rest of your life. There comes a point in a man's life when applause stops meaning what it used to. Compliments feel nice, but they no longer define him. Praise becomes background noise, and criticism doesn't crush him the way it once did. That shift doesn't happen overnight. You no longer judge people for their brokenness. You recognize it. You know the courage it takes just to keep going. And you learn how to hold space for people, just like you learned to hold space for yourself. There's no shortcut through inner healing. It's not about fixing everything overnight. It's about showing up for yourself consistently. Some days it hurts. Some days it feels impossible. But every time you sit with your pain instead of running from it, you reclaim a little more of your power. You become a little less afraid. And little by little, the pain loses its grip. It comes from a deeper journey, one where a man chooses to look within and find out who he truly is, apart from the opinions of others. When a man knows himself truly and fully, he stops needing external validation, not because he thinks he's better than anyone, but because he's no longer confused about his worth. He no longer walks into a room wondering if people will like him. He walks in already knowing who he is, what he stands for, and what he will or will not tolerate. That inner clarity becomes a kind of quiet power. It doesn't shout. It doesn't compete. It's simply validation from others used to be like oxygen. He'd perform for approval, strive to impress, say yes when he wanted to say no just to be accepted. He'd measure his value by how others reacted, by whether they smiled, responded, noticed. It was exhausting, because no matter how much he did, it was never enough. There was always someone who didn't clap, someone who didn't approve. And when you're addicted to validation, that one silent face in the crowd feels louder than all the applause in the world. But when he began to turn inward, when he started asking, who am I when no one's looking, everything changed. He met his true self in the silence. He saw his scars, his story, his values, and began to honor them. Not because anyone told him to, but because he finally realized they mattered. That realization didn't come with fanfare. It came in the still moments, in the quiet victories, in choosing to stay true to his path, even when no one was watching or clapping. It's knowing that your value isn't up for debate. And because he's no longer chasing approval, he's free. Free to make decisions from a place of integrity, not insecurity. Free to walk away from places and people that don't align with his purpose. Free to create, speak, and live in a way that reflects who he really is, not who the world says he should be. When a man knows himself, he becomes unshakable, not because life stops being hard, but because he's not constant looking outside for something he's already found within. And that kind of man, he walks differently. This man doesn't crumble under rejection because he's no longer dependent on approval to stand. He's not seeking validation because he's already validated himself. He's done the hard work, looking at his past, owning his mistakes, forgiving himself, and deciding who he wants to become. That kind of work can't be faked. And once you've done it, you don't need others to tell you your worth. You already know it. He's not arrogant. He's anchored. There's a difference. Arrogance demands attention. Anchoring doesn't. It's calm, steady, and unmoved by praise or criticism. And slowly, the need for validation began to fade. He stopped posting things just for likes. He stopped saying things just to be accepted. He started speaking his truth even if it made him unpopular. Not to be rebellious, but because peace meant more than popularity. He began to trust himself, his choices, his instincts, his convictions. That kind of self-trust isn't loud. It doesn't need to be announced. You can feel it in the way he responds instead of reacts, in the way he listens more than he speaks, in the way he's rooted even when everything around him is shaking. Silent battles create unshakable character because they test what's real when no one is watching. These are the moments when you cry and there's no one to hear it. When you fall apart and no one offers a hand. When you doubt everything, your path, your purpose, your worth, but still get up the next day and keep going. That quiet persistence, that decision to keep walking through the darkness without an audience or applause is what builds something deep inside. It's not about being unaffected. It's about continuing to move even when everything inside you is telling you to quit. Not above others, but deeply grounded, fully present, and quietly powerful. There's a kind of strength that doesn't come from lifting weights or leading crowds. It's not flashy. It doesn't show up in awards or titles. It's the strength that comes from fighting silent battles, the kind no one sees, the kind no one claps for. These are the struggles faced in the stillness of the night, the private wars waged in the corners of the heart. And though no one else may know about them, they shape a person more than anything else ever could. A person who has fought silent battles learns how to be still in the storm because they've already survived internal chaos that felt louder than any external noise. They know what it means to be broken, to feel alone, to question their place in the world, and still, they chose to stay in the fight. They didn't post about it. They didn't beg for sympathy. They simply endured. Not because they weren't hurting, but because they refused to be defined by the pain. These battles are never pretty. They're raw. They involve sleepless nights, painful self-reflection, and moments of deep isolation. There's a quiet nobility in those who carry pain they've never talked about. They walk with a certain depth. They love with a certain gentleness. They understand others in a way that doesn't come from books or advice, It comes from experience, from going through the fire and not losing their humanity in the process. Silent battles also teach humility, because when you've been through enough, you stop judging others for where they are. You recognize the signs of someone hurting beneath the surface, but in that space, something sacred is built. Endurance. A kind of mental and emotional muscle that no one else can train for you. It's personal. It's earned. And once it's developed, it becomes part of who you are. That kind of character can't be faked. It doesn't need to prove itself. You see it in how someone handles adversity. You hear it in their voice when they speak truth with calm. You feel it in their presence, solid, grounded, unwavering. Not because they've never been shaken, but because they've already been broken and survived. Instead of offering advice, you offer presence. Instead of trying to fix them, you simply walk beside them. That's the gift of having walked through your own valley. You no longer fear other people's darkness, because you've made peace with your own. The resilience built in silence isn't loud, but it's permanent. It becomes your foundation. When life gets chaotic, you return to it. You remember the strength it took to survive what no one else even knew you were going through. And that memory grounds you. It reminds you that you've already made it through worse. And not only did you survive, you became stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. People often chase visible success, thinking that's what defines greatness. But the greatest parts of a person are often invisible, built in the lonely seasons, forged in silent suffering, held together by faith, grit, and quiet determination. These unseen moments form a character that cannot be moved, no matter how loud the world gets. It's where healing happens. And most importantly, it's where preparation takes place for victories no one else can see coming. Stillness isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing something deeper. It's about listening, reflecting, processing. It's sitting in that quiet space, not trying to escape the moment, but fully entering into it. That's where growth happens. Not on the stage, not in the spotlight, but in the hidden corners of life where no one is watching. The person who learns to be still learns to listen, not just to the world, but to their soul. In stillness, you begin to recognize the difference between what's urgent and what's important. You realize how often you've been rushing, chasing, reacting without really knowing why. Stillness slows you down long enough to ask honest questions. Am I headed in the right direction? Am I doing this for me or for someone else's approval? What do I really want? Those answers don't shout. They whisper. And you can only hear them when you're quiet enough to listen. There's a reason so many breakthroughs are born in stillness. It gives the mind space to breathe. That discipline takes root. That vision sharpens. So when the opportunity finally arrives, you don't just show up. You show up ready. Stillness also protects you from making moves out of fear, pressure, or desperation. When you're grounded in stillness, you don't rush into things just to feel productive. You move with purpose, not panic. You wait, not passively, but with expectation. You know that timing matters, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be patient. In that place of calm, that courage grows, because it takes courage to be still when everyone else is moving. The heart space to speak, the soul space to stretch. It's not a pause in progress. It's part of the progress. Just like seeds need time underground before they sprout. Victories often begin in the invisible places. They start in the still moments when no one else can see what's forming, but you can feel it deep inside. That inner preparation is what gives strength to stand when the time comes, because unseen victories aren't about chance. They're about readiness, about what was built in the quiet before the world took notice. It's in the stillness that character is formed. It takes strength to stay when you feel like running. But every time you resist the urge to escape the quiet, you get stronger, more confident, more prepared. The waiting isn't empty, it's building you for something you might not even see coming yet. Stillness also teaches trust. You begin to trust yourself, your process, your inner compass. You stop needing constant validation or direction from the outside. You realize that everything you need is already within you. You just needed the space to uncover it. That kind of trust becomes a foundation, one that can carry you through anything. In his stillness, he prepares for victories that don't need to be seen to be real. Let the world chase applause. Let it rush toward empty validation. You keep walking your path. Keep growing in the quiet. Keep trusting the process. Because the strength you're building now, one day it will speak louder than any crowd ever could. Thank you. Because you're no longer relying on circumstances to tell you when it's your time. You already know who you are and what you're capable of. So when the moment finally comes, when the door opens, the opportunity rises, the breakthrough appears, you're not surprised. You're not scrambling. You're steady because you know what it took to get there. You know the silent work that was done in the shadows, decisions made in the quiet, the growth that happened without an audience. That's the kind of victory that lasts, not because it was loud, but because it was earned in stillness. So if you've ever found yourself in a season of silence, if you've ever walked through pain no one saw, fought battles no one knew about, or waited in stillness while the world kept spinning, know this: you are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are being shaped, refined, and prepared for something greater than you can yet imagine. The man who spends time alone isn't weak. He's powerful, because in his solitude, he meets his truest self. In his silent battles, he discovers a resilience that noise can't build. Because when someone has faced their own inner demons and lived to tell the story, they become the kind of person who walks into chaos and brings calm because they've already found peace within themselves. In a world that moves fast, where noise fills every corner and busyness is worn like a badge of honor, stillness often feels unnatural. It's misunderstood, overlooked, and sometimes feared. People associate it with laziness, stagnation, or falling behind. But stillness, true, intentional stillness, is one of the most powerful places a person can be. It's where clarity begins.